Y'all, welcome to another episode of U.S. History Made Plain. I'm a high school history teacher trying to make history as fun and interesting for my students as possible. So let's talk about the King's reaction to the First Continental Congress. He was not okay with what they were doing over across the seas. However, he felt like Massachusetts was the main problem. They were the aggressors. So he declared Massachusetts to be in a state of rebellion, and he sent troops over to get everybody in line. But of course, Boston was about that life. So Boston had people ready and waiting for these troops to get to Massachusetts, and when they did, there were several violent run-ins, beginning the Revolutionary War. So the first battle of the American Revolution was called Lexington and Concord. The reason it's called this is because the British troops were sent to the town of Concord to take over the military supplies that were there. But Paul Revere and William Dawes were from the town of Lexington, and they got a group of men together called the Minutemen that were supposed to intercept the British troops before they got to Concord to destroy the supplies that they had for the war. It didn't work out well for the Minutemen. There weren't many of them to begin with. 8 of them were killed in that battle, and the British troops were able to continue on to Concord and destroy military supplies. So they lost, but it's okay. That wasn't the end of the war. So after leaving Concord, the British were feeling themselves, and they're like, haha, this is gonna be real easy like we thought, because we know the colonists can't fight no way. They were on their way back to Boston. Minutemen started firing on them from behind these stone walls. So they're marching, lots of them. All of a sudden somebody's shooting, but when you look around, you don't see anybody. So there's nowhere to really shoot back. 250 British soldiers were killed, and it was considered a win for the colonists. Britain's feelings were kind of hurt because here they are getting beat by an amateur military, because remember, they thought that the colonists couldn't fight. The colonists are showing they actually got a little something up their sleeve. In June of 1775, a battle took place outside of Boston. It was actually on Breed's Hill. Breed's Hill was next to Bunker Hill. The battle is called the Battle of Bunker Hill, but it actually happened on Breed's Hill. The British were able to take the hill, but they lost 1,000 soldiers, which to the colonists, which had a much smaller army, that was a win for them because they took the lives of so many British soldiers. Let's talk about the Second Continental Congress. Fighting is already happening. Delegates came back together in Philadelphia again in May of 1775. This time, they were divided. Some were ready to declare independence. They wanted to have their own. They did not want to be a part of Britain anymore. Some, even though fighting was going on, still felt like maybe we can get our relationship back to the way it was before the 7 Years' War. So they hadn't decided exactly what they were going to do, but eventually they came up with the Declaration of Causes and Necessities. This was, hey, we fighting, so every colony needs to provide their own troops to fight this war because Britain is over here. Either we're gonna fight or we're gonna get killed. So George Washington was appointed as the commander-in-chief of these new forces that were created after the Second Continental Congress, and they sent him to Boston to lead the troops. They also had a second force. Benedict Arnold led a raid into French Canada, right? So remember Quebec? Remember Britain gave all that land to the French Canadians? So the colonists were afraid that the French Canadians were going to align themselves with Britain. So Benedict Arnold and his people had to drive the French Canadians away so that the colonists could fight Britain on their own.